was in West Bengal. There has been a study that was commissioned by the West Bengal Tourism Department on how much was the impact of the Durga Puja festival, which is the one major festival that they have in West Bengal. And that British Council had undertaken that study, and it was found that it had economic impact of almost 32,000 crores and contributing to almost 3% of West Bengal's GDP. So because there was a measurement done, there was a study done, so they could understand that it had such a great economic impact. And the 10 creative industries they identified which are related to the pujas, which is like installation, idol making, lighting and illumination, retail, sponsorships, advertisements, and food and beverages. All of this contributed to this much to the economy of the state. Kumbh Mela, be it Char Dham, be it Diwali, or any of these festivities, especially in the religion, which is so massive and in such a large scale. It generates so much of employment around the area. If you see, the local vendors, the say if it's the local flower maker, the basket maker, and so on and so forth, and the shops and the advertisements and the lightings and the artists, the local artists also get employment. So it's a huge economic churning that happens. Festivals are cannot be just looked upon as some kind of a meaningless ritual or a mechanical ritual that your father is doing it, so you do it. So it's important for the child to understand why we have these festivities, and I think every festival has a very great significance in our culture, and it's a symbolic in nature. Every festival, for example, Diwali, good over evil, a victory of good over evil. If it's Onam in Kerala, it's about prosperity and the harvest season, the commencement of the harvest season. So everything has such beautiful meanings, and it's a part of our rich culture that. Because we've been steeped in this colonial legacy for many, many years now, and it's been over 100 years. We are still reeling under the influence of the British Raj, so to speak, in every phase of our life. Be it the bureaucracy, be it the every aspect of our life, we still have the colonial hangover. And I feel this government at the national level is doing its bit to transform, but it doesn't happen overnight, because it's 100 years of legacy.
Namaste and welcome to all Enge Bharatam channel viewers. So this is the festival season, and India is not only a land of festivals, but perhaps it is the only country that has so many festivals which are locally connected to each culture in that locality. At the same time, they are being observed all over the country. You cannot find this sort of a unique phenomena anywhere else in the world, because each of the ceremonies, each of the festivals that we have are actually connected to the local customs, making it unique, indigenous to that particular locality. At the same time, it also has a vein of national integration running through the festivals. However, there is an economic side as well to these festivals. And right from the time of institution of these festivals, we strongly believe that this aspect has also been taken into account, so that let it be a festival or a life-changing event like a marriage or any other ceremony or celebration that is happening in the family, it is not only for the purpose of ceremony and for the purpose of tradition, but even economic reasons are there behind each and every event that happens, including festivals. So today, we have with us a very unique personality. And if I start describing and if I start detailing on her achievements, I don't think we will be able to have an interview today. I can only have an introduction. So to put it very short, she is the person behind Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Urban Mission, so on and so forth. So many government projects that are very successful with the people today. And she is also part of the Ministry of MSME, and she is the Chief of Programs handling externally aided missions. And she is also on the board of studies for leading global institutes, and she has received the award from Indian Achievers Forum for outstanding contributions to the field of to all these fields. And today, there cannot be a more fit person to speak about how our culture, our festivals, and our economy are integrated. Namaste, ma'am. Welcome to Enge Bharatam.
Namaste, namaste. Thank you so much for calling me, and I happy Dhanteras to all your viewers, and happy Deepavali also. And I'm excited to be on your show.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So the first question, any thing that is happening economically in a country, the direct indicator, one of the most important indicators would be GDP. I would like to start there. So how are, festivals or celebrations or traditions integrated with our economy here in India?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, very well articulated, that our festivities are so unique to each area and to each region, but at the same time, it has a national sentimental, national fervor to it. But apart from having these national big festivals like Deepavali and all of these festivals, there are also very local festivals in every state, right? Like for example, Tamil Nadu government, I mean Tamil Nadu state has a festival for every month. I think every month there is actually a festival if you actually see the festivities in Tamil Nadu. So when you see these festivities, like you rightly mentioned, every festivity will actually have a lot of ripple effect in the economy around it. It's called local economic development. It's also a global concept called local economic development. And in our country, in India, I think local economic development around festivities is a very it's a very concept that needs to be really built and designed well, and it has to be taken cognizance of by the local authorities, by the government. And what is happening today is all these festivities across India, be it Kumbh Mela, be it Char Dham, be it Diwali, or any of these festivities, especially in the religion, which is so massive and in such a large scale. It generates so much of employment around the area. If you see, the local vendors, the say if it's the local flower maker, the basket maker, and so on and so forth, and the shops and the advertisements and the lightings and the artists, the local artists also get employment. So it's a huge economic churning that happens. So this has not been actually measured and taken cognizance of by the authorities, I think. And it was in West Bengal. There has been a study that was commissioned by the West Bengal Tourism Department on how much was the impact of the Durga Puja festival, which is the one major festival that they have in West Bengal. And that British Council had commissioned, that British Council had undertaken that study, and it was found that it had economic impact of almost 32,000 crores and contributing to almost 3% of West Bengal's GDP. So because there was a measurement done, there was a study done, so they could understand that it had such a great economic impact. And the 10 creative industries they identified which are related to the pujas, which is like installation, idol making, lighting and illumination, retail, sponsorships, advertisements, and food and beverages. All of this contributed to this much to the economy of the state. So if you see Tamil Nadu, like every month, we have one festival, like maybe Anyavatam, Odipuram, then Deepavali, Thai Pongal. So every month, these kind of festivities will have to be really, I think it has to be nurtured. What is happening in India is it's very organic kind of way in which these festivities happen because of traditional rituals. But I think if the government can also give a thrust to it and give some impetus and maybe institutionalize all the informal sector workers around these festivities, it will contribute greatly to the economy of a state.
Yes, ma'am. As you rightly said, the retail sector is actually the area wherein the festivity can actually boost the economy. So I would like to throw some light on this. That is, when any festival is happening in any particular locality, or for that matter, even a temple festival, a chariot festival is happening in that particular locality, then we have so many unorganized retailers, and they are all basically like unorganized, and as well as they are very small scale industries and small scale retailers. They all come together, and there is actually a network. We really do not know how. If you go to one particular chariot festival in the northern Tamil Nadu, and if you go to another chariot festival the next month, the southern Tamil Nadu, you will find the same balloon fellow standing in both the places. So there are so many, traveling people like this. And I would like to know, like, how much can this, in terms of, numbers, how much can this sort of a retail industry, this sort of a festival-oriented retail industry add to the economy?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I just mentioned, this West Bengal government had done a study and they had understood that it contributes to almost 3% of the GDP, including in retail also. And retail was actually contributing to the maximum percentage of this contribution. So as you said, retail just does not mean formal retail like the supermarkets, but also the informal traders, the informal vendors who make a lot of living out of such festivities, and their living is all seasonal. So therefore, they need to maximize on these times, and therefore the retail trade would flourish during this time. So that's why I think in Tamil Nadu there is a festival every month. So there is employment for the retail trader every month. Actually, the trader survives on this. But there is a need to actually formalize this, and perhaps the government should also recognize this as a trade and actually give some impetus to institutionalize and formalize this so that they also get some support and for their employment, sustainable employment through the year.
Yes, so it would be beneficial, okay, probably as you said, maybe once you say formalizing, like, do you mean, for example, providing the, small time loans, or even providing them some sort of a corporation or a unit or a union wherein they will be able to communicate between one another, so on and so forth. So that is a very important thing, because as you said, this is a seasonal business for them, and throughout the year they'll go for either some sort of a all these 100 days work, or 100 rupees per day. They will go to the buildings as coolies and other things. But during the festive season, even for that matter, the artists, village artists and rural artists who are taking part in all these ceremonies, they will go for these sort of one-day jobs here in Tamil Nadu during the rest of the year. You can find that very commonly in the villages. So, like as you said, that is a very important thing. And on a negative note for this topic, from the contrary, we see so much of propaganda happening due to various reasons. That is, of course, valid only on a case-by-case basis. But overall, the propaganda is that, Diwali, you should not burst crackers. So this particular festival, Corona is there, you should not have a procession. And then in this particular festival, this particular community is not being allowed, so that festival itself should not happen. So these sorts of narratives are being set in small, capsules all over the country in various backdrops with various reasons. So do you think this is an effort to, in fact, destroy this sort of a festival-related economy?
Yeah, absolutely. See, when the COVID broke out, the whole globe was taken by surprise and storm, and they did not know how to react, because this pandemic was something which is completely new, and even WHO themselves did not know how to counter this. So all countries went into lockdowns, and that was the only way we could survive the pandemic in the initial phase, that is in the beginning of 2020. But thereon, we learned our lessons, and we had challenges in the first and the second wave. But then we mastered the whole pandemic, and we have now we've just crossed the 100 crore mark for the vaccinations. So I think we have, kind of crossed that stage of danger zone, as so-called the pandemic. It's becoming an endemic now. So I think now it's high time to open up the economy. And therefore, these festivities are, as we said, we recognized it just in the last conversation, that it contributes so much to the GDP. So I think it's important for state governments to open up these festivities, but with slight precautions. I would not say that laissez-faire and completely throw caution to the winds and have, the festivities like we had in pre-pandemic times, but have certain amount of social distancing norms and do it in a scientific way, which even before pandemic, we should have such kind of norms in place. Even the pre-pandemic times we should have had, because we have heard of stories of the Kumbh Mela stampedes and how many people die. And that's a shame on our country that we're not able to control such massive festivities. But if we do it in a controlled, streamlined manner, this can be such a beautiful manifestation of our culture. This festivities across the country, so many 600 odd districts. Every district, I think, will have its own unique flavor. So it's an amazing, diverse country. So it's really, there is need to kind of preserve, conserve, and showcase these cultures and festivities. Therefore, I think it's time to open up and do it in a controlled manner, but not in a really tight controlled manner, but giving some amount of freedom to the citizens. And it could also be like there could be timings, there could be phased timings, a certain number of people at certain times. And so those are small measures that can be taken to ensure that the festivities do not end up in another wave of the pandemic.
Yes, excellent. So speaking of which, the stampede that is happening, I think this sort of a propaganda, this may be happening truly, but making that as something to be ashamed of is the sort of narrative that is being set right now. You don't know crowd control, so better don't have crowds is what essentially, they are trying to set the narrative as. But this is not new. As old as, I think 1835, in 1835, William Wilberforce was speaking in the British Parliament. And his supporters stated that every year 12,000 children are being sacrificed in front of the Jagannath chariot. So they were trying to speak about the so-called brutality of the so-called, Hindu, religion, other religions, and they were trying to set a narrative for the missionaries. And at that time, this was the statement that they made. So right from that time, the whole perspective of those who are against our culture and against the economic and national well-being of our country has been this. So what would be your advice to the younger generation who think that, okay, this festival is going to cause pollution, this festival is involves child labor, and this festival is especially superstition. So this is what is, the narrative that is being said. For each festival, they will have one reason. The reasons behind, asking people to give up that festival will not be related to one another. But unfortunately, the whole narrative is that if it is Diwali, then crackers are a problem. If it is, going to be this one, Tamil New Year's Day, then you say, yeah, this calendar is actually not scientific. We have the other calendar, which is more scientific. So like this, practically speaking, most of the younger generation does not even know the actual Indian date and the month of that particular day. None of us knows. If we ask the date, we will say, yeah, today is what, 2nd of November. But what is the actual date? Nobody knows. So that sort of a scenario is there. So what would be your advice, or what would be your suggestion to the younger generation, the way in which they should look at these festivals?
Yeah, absolutely. So, see, festivals are cannot be just looked upon as some kind of a meaningless ritual or a mechanical ritual that your father is doing it, so you do it. So it's important for the child to understand why we have these festivities, and I think every festival has a very great significance in our culture, and it's a symbolic in nature. Every festival, for example, Diwali, good over evil, a victory of good over evil. If it's Onam in Kerala, it's about prosperity and the harvest season, the commencement of the harvest season. So everything has such beautiful meanings, and it's a part of our rich culture that our in our country has. So it's something to be conserved and preserved and to be documented and actually interpreted well to the new generation. So, which is what the new education policy of our government attempts to do. It attempts to bring back the new generation to our own culture, because we've been steeped in this colonial legacy for many, many years now. And, it's been over 100 years. We are still reeling under the influence of the British Raj, so to speak, in every phase of our life, be it the bureaucracy, be it the, every aspect of our life, we still have the colonial hangover. And I feel this government at the national level is doing its bit to transform, but it doesn't happen overnight, because it's 100 years of legacy. We are trying to break the shackles and introduce these, elements of Bharatiyata to our new generation. And it is very important that the new generation understands the value of and significance of every festival. And I think that has to be ingrained in the the teachings. And it's not a religious color that we are giving, but it's a cultural significance that one needs to understand, because we are living in a diverse, rich country like India. So we better understand what is our culture, what is our our native culture, what is our national culture, what is our state's culture. I think these things have to be actually disseminated well to the younger generation. And I feel, but there is a positivity now. The new generation is understanding, and they are much more, I think, excited about these festivals. And it's taking a new, very nice turn now, because when you see Diwali also, it's good that, there is a ban on the polluting kind of crackers and the noise decibels to be reduced. And that is understood, because as, generation evolves, we need to go with the times, and we need to be more scientific in our, but those are acceptable changes to our festivals that we can do. And it is important also that we do it. And across the value chain, if we actually analyze every aspect of a festivity, and we could look, like, for example, child labor. That is something that we need to tackle. We need to intervene, and there's something bad about the value chain. Then the next value chain is about the ingredients. How polluting is it, or how good or bad it is for the environment or for consumption or whatever. For example, Holi. Now, Holi, the colors that we used to use earlier, it was so bad for the skin, and now they've come out with organic colors. So those are good, I think, inputs to give to these festivities, but with retaining the essence of Holi. So yeah.
Yes, that is true. And actually, the problem here is that you can say Roman culture, and then Western civilization's culture, and then Christianity. You can say Arabic Middle Eastern culture, and then Islam. But you do not have such a distinction here at all. There was no time in this Bharatavarsha when there was no Sanatana Dharma, and there was no time in Sanatana Dharma when it was not available in this Bharatavarsha. So this sort of a invariable relationship between the culture and the religion is what makes this so unique, and that is what, as you said, the younger generation needs to realize. And also, you said the colonial hangover is a very big problem because of, we do not want to be called an Orthodox Hindu. That becomes a huge problem in our minds, because we think that Orthodox is something, old values, and, I'm not that old to be Orthodox. So these sorts of thoughts are there, and as you rightly said, now the national education policy is trying to make those changes, trying to bring back our original pride, and exactly to make sure that our younger generation is actually proud of what they need to be proud of. Instead of all the Western credentials and all the materialistic things, we need to be proud of the longest standing history and the longest standing culture, which has gone through so much of troubles and so much of struggle, and still it is existing today. So thank you so much, ma'am. I would like you to say a few words on your own, whatever message you would like to convey to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is not, culture is not about just one religion. It's a national culture, and it's not just Hinduism. It's also the Muslim festivals like Eid and all, which we need to embrace and celebrate. And it all comes under this big, wide, large-hearted religion called Hinduism. So Hinduism is all-encompassing. It's a way of life, and so our festivities are an integral part of our national culture, and we need to preserve, conserve, and celebrate these festivities with all measures taken against possible outbreaks and pandemics and other disasters, man-made or natural disasters.
Excellent, ma'am. So thank you so much for your time and your valid point. That actually adds a lot of value to our festivals. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Happy Diwali once again.
Happy Diwali to you too, ma'am, and to our viewers as well. And please do not forget to subscribe to the channel if you have not, and do share this video to reach as many people as possible. And please do like this video, and you can ask any questions that you may have in comments, because you may once again have ma'am here if there are sufficient questions that requires another interview. Yes.
Thank you.